Welcome everyone to our live call with Barry and Steve. Would like to welcome you today as we talk about transition tips and prepare for the Halloween season. This is our, we'll be starting our call momentarily. People are getting on and we'll start taking your questions. And again, our topic today, something near and dear we've been talking about for a long time, is transitioning, either breaking into medical device sales or people who are in between jobs. So we get a lot of calls for that, and we're looking forward to sharing some of the tips. All right, so before we start off, we just want to share a couple housekeeping tips. If you join the call via your phone, feel free to put yourself on mute if you'd like, or you can just add yourself, *6 will put you on or off mute. That's easy to do. If you're joining us by video, you can show your picture or hide your picture, it depends. You can also use the mute key if you're in a noisy area. But our goal here is to make this easy for everyone to hear us. So if you are in a noisy area, please mute yourself on the phone and take it from there. Barry, did I forget any housekeeping tips?
No, you're good. You're good. We have somebody in on the phone, so that was helpful information on how to mute and unmute.
All right, thank you. And in the meantime, as a reminder, we're recording this and we'll post this online. If you have to jump off or if you're joining us partway through, don't worry about missing the questions. We'll make sure you get the recording. We'll share it out there in the social media world. All right, so I just want to take a few minutes and talk about some of these high-level transitioning tips that we've been sharing. Again, Barry and I have been doing this on the groups for the last 10 years. And one of the things that comes up, there's some common questions. Where do I start? Where do I go? How do I leverage LinkedIn, social media, Facebook? What companies do I go after? There's some high-level questions that we run into all the time. And last week, I shared some information and an article on LinkedIn, and I'm going to put that actually in the link when we share this recording, because I call it my recipe for transitioning or entering into medical device sales, because they're good reminders if you're doing that, but it's also a great place to start if you haven't looked for a job in the last 5, 10, 15 years, kudos. But at the same time, where do I start today with all the technology? And more importantly, how do I sell myself today? Barry and I, again, we've talked about this. Most of the people we work with who are sales professionals have spent many years and months getting training on their equipment and services, right? Would spend time, I know I did in orthopedics, on great cadaver labs, bone model labs, sitting in classrooms with didactic training. But when we're transitioning, we have to focus on selling ourselves. And for a lot of us, it's hard to do. We have a basic resume, we get it out there, but at some point, we have a set of skills, experiences that are unique to us, our background, our training, everything that makes us successful. How do we summarize that in a one-page format? Sometimes people are asking, oh, just submit a resume with one page. Really hard to do. So we're trying to leverage social media, your network, your connections, everything you've done to really take advantage of what you bring to the field and how to do that. One of the stories that, it's funny, we're doing this, we're recording video, but over the last couple of years, and I just shared this with a client recently, is making a video introduction of yourself and putting it on your social media channels. It's funny when we put our resume out there or our LinkedIn profile, where people are expecting recruiters or people that they work with to come to their profile and understand exactly what they can offer and who they're offering it to. So the power of video, and we use it all the time. We're listening to podcasts, we're watching video clips. Well, guess what? Everyone who has a smartphone has the ability. Now, granted, it may not be a masterpiece, Oscar-nominated production, but it will allow people to get to see you and hear you and learn a little bit about who you are. Barry's been having some great success with that, and I'm going to turn it over to her in a moment because it's something she may or may not agree with me, but Barry's very photogenic, and I've been asking her for a long time to go out there and do video, and it is hard. It's hard to put yourself out there, but once she started, it was amazing the responses she had just in the last 30 days. So Barry, would you mind sharing some of the challenges you had that were preventing you from going on video? And once you got past that, what type of feedback have you been getting? And what would you recommend for somebody who's just starting using video to share themselves with their community?
Yes, Steve, it's been very challenging for me. Even though I have a background as an entertainer, to put myself out there just felt so vulnerable. And over my 10 or 12 years on LinkedIn, people have always said, you have such great stories, you need to share them with people. And when I first met Steve, he kept saying, you should write a blog, you should write a blog, because 15 years ago, blogs were where it was at. And it took me a year to start writing a blog. And once I did it, it was like the floodgates open, and I thought of all these stories, and I would just, anytime something would happen, I would see the lesson in it and write a blog. And that lasted about 2 years. I was blogging probably twice a week. As social media and the technology and smartphones continually improved, it was like, one step up, one step up, one step up. And it finally got to the point where video is where it's at. There's Instagram, there's stories on Facebook, there's TikTok, there's all these apps that utilize video. And for me, I have a pretty big personality, and I always felt like my resume was so flat. And even my blog, even though I have a sense of humor when I write, I still felt like if my personality is my selling point in some cases, how do I share my personality with people? Because the resume is just a marketing brochure, and there's no way to impart who I am in that. It's just what I did. So who am I? And about a year ago, I had a Zoom call with another LinkedIn member, and he said, you have such great stories, you have to put them out there. And I didn't want to do it and didn't want to do it. And I was watching all these videos on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden, I would notice little things like the person who's standing on the street and the noise of the cars zooming by, or they were sitting 6 feet away from their computer and they had a crummy microphone and I could barely hear them. So last August, and I remember it like it was yesterday, my first video was, if you're going to make a video, please record it somewhere where we can hear you. And I found out later on that most people don't even watch the videos with the sound on. And so then the next step was everybody started captioning them. Well, I haven't gotten to that yet. I have to admit it. I'm still doing audio. But I started taking some of those lessons that I've learned and things that have happened to me and what I took from it and putting it up there. And it's amazing to me because I sort of take my life for granted. And when I realize that if I learn this lesson, maybe it will help other people, and LinkedIn is about helping other people, why not share my experiences? So I got good lighting, and I put my computer somewhere where there's no distraction. As you can see behind me, it's my dining room wall. And I just started putting my thoughts out there. And it's amazing to me. People are like, wow, that was inspirational, or that's such a good lesson, or thank you so much. And in addition to knowing that I'm finally getting my personality out there, it's also been so meaningful to me that people are commenting and sending me private messages thanking me. I feel so good knowing that my own discomfort is actually doing something for somebody else.
So Barry, I just want to throw this out there. After the first video and you realized it was virtually painless, right? And the funny thing is, again, if you're transitioning with everything going on, it's just one other thing to do.
Yeah.
But I guess, Barry, again, hindsight, knowing what you know now, what would you share with somebody who was thinking about, geez, I want to do it, I know I should do it? What's your final thought? What's the one thing you would tell them?
Just do it. Just do it. I mean, if you have a setup where you can have like 3 or 4 keywords to make sure that you have the points that you want to hit, it's okay to have notes. Don't write a script. If it's in your head, it'll come out. So just sit in front of the camera, try to remove any distractions, put your phone on silent so it doesn't ring in the middle of a recording. Made that mistake last week. And just do it. It doesn't hurt. And if you don't like it, guess what? You can hit the delete button and do it again.
Yep.
You do not have to put one out there that has mistakes on it. Just keep doing it till you get it right. Even though it's only a 2-minute video, it might take you a half an hour to do it. But just...
You mean a whole half an hour, Barry?
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, and again, so I had a client I was working with, and he was looking down, reading his notes, and I asked him to write his key points and tape them to the wall behind the camera. You know, little things you can do to get yourself out there. Again, if you and I were having coffee and we were meeting, and Barry and I were meeting, and for the first time, we wouldn't be looking at notes as much as I would be sharing, you know, this is what I'm looking for, you know, tell me more about what you do. I mean, it's a good conversation. But here's the final thought on video. Like a lot of technology, and that's one of the things we'll be talking about down the road, is technology that we use in our job and our career and our life, right? It's a tool. And even though we're on the receiving end, a lot of phone calls and video and recordings, again, we can talk about 10 years ago when I started doing teleclasses, we weren't using video, we were using conference calls. And then we started doing webinars, and it was hard because the technology was up and coming. And then we started doing live videos. And the truth is, we all have to practice. And if you're in the medical device field or any type of field that uses technology, there's always a learning curve. And I would rather have us be on the front edge of that, riding that wave and leading change versus getting dragged into that. Again, there's small little things you can do to separate yourself going forward. So while we're talking about technology, the other thing I think that has come up recently that we can do as a group if you're transitioning, one of the most underrated pieces of real estate on your LinkedIn profile, Barry already knows. Anyone else know while we're here live? Anyone have an idea of an underrated place on your LinkedIn profile that's not being utilized to its fullest extent?
I think this is Cindy Soleo. I think sometimes it's your picture.
You're right. Hey, Cindy, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, well,
because I look at some pictures and they're off center, or they've got, like, you know, people cut out, you know, it's not professional looking if that's what you're trying to achieve.
Yes. I mean, think about this. If you're going to go through all that trouble of putting a nice video of yourself up, we have to lead them to look at your profile first. And again, in the old days, you know, my oldest son said, "Dad, how come we don't have as many pictures of me?" And I said, "Well, we didn't have a digital camera back then. We had a regular camera, and you would take the photos and then you would have to scan them," which most people have a scanner printer combo. Or now you can take a picture of your picture with your phone and upload it. But by the time my youngest came along, we had digital cameras, so he's the special one, right? Because there's pictures of him. So you're right on. Your your profile picture is the first thing people see, right? What's that impression? What's that image? The second thing that they see, and this is connected to your picture, is your LinkedIn profile background. Have you ever noticed some people have nothing? Some people maybe have a generic background photo that LinkedIn provides. But if you're really trying to get across what you can provide and offer somebody, and again, I just had this discussion with a couple of clients over the last couple months because I started noticing that everything we're doing is leading people to read more, right? They see your picture, they click on your profile, they see your banner and say, I want to learn more. They're going to scroll down, they're going to scroll down, they're going to scroll down. So we want to get a professional picture or even something that shows you in a professional setting. It's okay to have and there are people I know that have an action photo, right? Doing something, action Jackson type of thing. Take advantage and see if you can, and there's plenty of tools out there, and we'll put that out there. Canva, Canva is a website where you can put images and edit them and make your own profile. We'll put the link in the bottom of the video, these tools where you can take an image, you can put text in it, and you can make a nice LinkedIn profile banner picture that goes across the background. Again, it may help you get noticed, and it may want people to read more because they're going to see it. And again, for those of you who are road warriors who are on the road, we see banners all the time. We know marketing works. We know those advertising banners work. We want people to read more. Cindy, do you have anything on your profile, by the way?
As far as, I just have my picture. Is that what you mean?
Right, but the banner behind your picture, do you have anything on that?
I don't have a banner behind my picture.
On your LinkedIn profile?
Right. It's just a picture. It's just a headshot of me.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Kind of. If you go to your LinkedIn profile and you're editing your profile, you have that big banner across the top.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of something else. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So
that's why we're, yeah.
So mine says biotech, pharma, medical device sales.
Okay. All right. So whatever you want the message out there, you know, take advantage of that. And again, some people are utilizing. Do people notice that? Are you getting good responses on that?
I'm getting views. I mean, you get the weekly statistics on how many people view your profile. So yeah, I'm getting views. As far as, I occasionally get people to reach out to me.
Okay. So, all right. So let's step back and while you're on the line and we're talking about transitioning, I know you shared some information with us a couple of weeks ago. If we're looking at high-level tips, what would be helpful? What could we share with you today to help kind of jumpstart the process? Or if it is going in the right direction and you want to move in another direction?
I think things are going okay right now. I am in the process of interviewing right now for a position. And I've had recently people contacting me with positions. So I feel like I'm getting activity, which is good.
Excellent.
So I don't, and I used your tips from last week or 2 weeks ago about the value prop and connecting on social media. So I've been a little bit more diligent in connecting on LinkedIn and, commenting on things that I think are relevant, that type of thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, good. Well, thank you. And please keep us updated. And I'll take a look at your profile again on your background too. I mean, I think for the most part, and again, as you know, there's no secret sauce. It's a whole bunch of little things we do going forward. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that's helpful. I want to open it up to other questions. I know we have other people on the call. Other questions out there? You can chat, or if you're online, I know some people are listening, you can send over a message, or you can just jump right in. All right. One of the things when we're talking about transitioning, and Cindy, you alluded to this, one of the biggest questions I get is how to position yourself, and what are people seeing when they look at my profile? What are they reading? And I think the easiest way to think about this is looking at yourself through other people's eyes, right? What do they see? And it's hard sometimes because we're very close to that. And I think having feedback from friends and colleagues and people who can give you, my wife loves me, I love my wife, but sometimes, if I ask for advice, it's hard for her to be objective, right? She still has to live with me, and vice versa. And there are other people in our life that we can go to, and sometimes they're afraid to hurt our feelings. If you find someone who's honest with you, they'll tell you the truth. That's great. You want to make sure that you can look at yourself objectively and say, how am I presenting? What are other people seeing? And is my messaging clear? Is my goals clear? Is my value proposition clear? I know and again, it's funny, we talk about communications, and I love talking about this because it's an ongoing work in progress. But how come people can't look at my profile and my job experience and instantly connect on what I can do to help them? And in certain fields, they can, certain technical backgrounds, certain positions. There may be people you're networking with, or recruiters who can instantly look at that and say, oh yes, I know what this person can do. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen like that. And when you're networking and you're asking other people to be your virtual sales team, to be your eyes and ears, we have to educate them in a sense, especially if they're not in that particular field or they don't have the same background. But we also have to make it easy for other people to see how we can help them. And it is hard sometimes, and this is where the branding, the marketing, and the communication factor come in to play, the social media, the trifecta, so to speak. So Barry, I want to get your input on, again, communication. And again, Barry and I have gone back and forth. We've talked about this for a long time, and we're kind of sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Do you have an example of the good and the bad and the ugly, Barry, from your personal experience, or something you've bumped into? I'm not putting you on the spot. I just know you have a lot of stuff that you can share because we've been there.
Well, regarding the communication issue, what I can speak to is sometimes when I'm talking to you about things that we've put up on LinkedIn, or people who are looking, like, okay, an example is my profile about a month ago. I am working with you in every capacity other than actually being one of the coaches, full-fledged. I mean, I do talk to people about career transition and share my experiences, but I'm not a coach. So somebody looked at my profile and said, I'm looking for a coach. Can you coach me? And I said, well, thanks for reaching out. I can certainly connect you to Steve. She's like, oh, I thought you were a coach. So I had to take a look at my profile and try to see what she was seeing to understand why she thought I was a coach. And I know Steve, sometimes he's not a recruiter. And I know you constantly get people saying, hey, do you have any jobs for me? It doesn't say that Steve is a recruiter anywhere on his profile. He helps people transition because he's a good coach, but he's not a recruiter. So it's not always about what we put out there. It's about how people perceive what we've put out there. So we have to make sure that we are clear enough that there's not any room for error.
No, but Barry, to your point, and again, as a, when we think about this, again, I know what I'm saying. How come you don't understand? And I think we do this, right? Again, if you're in healthcare, physicians, nurses, when they're giving medication, they'll do a check. When I was working in the OR passing instruments, I had doctors would put their hand out and say, give me a scalpel, a clamp, a retractor. Sometimes they would put their hand out, they wouldn't say anything. And after 2 minutes, they'd say, okay, how come you didn't give me an instrument? And I say, you didn't ask. As much as I could assume and I'm following the procedure, I can't give them an instrument. And sometimes certain things, yes, I could predict what they needed. But the funny part is we fall into this, and information overload is part of that. Also, with all the again, social media is a great tool, but people are being bombarded. So when you're trying to get your message out while you're transitioning, I think keeping it simple, and again, not going to alleviate all the miscommunication, but it will help. And sometimes we have to step back and truly, what's the message we're presenting compared to other people either in that subspecialty, in that field, in that role? Again, are we positioning ourselves a certain way? I know, and again, going to Barry's point, over the years, because we manage and own some medical device groups, there's a natural assumption that we were recruiters. And that would happen a lot. And we try to put everything other than, hey, we're not recruiters. Hey, it's Steve and Barry, we're not recruiters, But that's okay. I mean, we get a conversation going, and we do try to share information, and sometimes it's a miscommunication. Heck, I've been with my wife for a long time. Barry and I miscommunicate after working together for many years. It happens. I don't know of anyone who doesn't have a miscommunication. It's part of the process. And when you're transitioning, we talk about being very focused, strategic, but also checking, making sure your message is getting through. When people are marketing on the internet, and you may have heard this or seen this, email marketing people talk about A/B test campaigns. There's a subject line, do we need to test it a little bit? Sometimes we have to test our message and make sure it's resonating with the right people. Are we getting through to, again, recruiters? If you're getting people calling you up for interviews, if people are calling you and expressing interest, you're on the right track. If you're getting all that interest, sometimes people may have challenges with the interview. They haven't interviewed in many years, or maybe they have trouble closing the interview process. But depending where you are in that process, you want to make sure your message is clear. You want to make sure you're projecting the information, the image of professionalism, competence, success that you want people to see. And I think that's, at the end of the day, if we were to summarize that for people who are watching this and people who are thinking about their next steps, I think that's the tough part. I'll just share this quick story. I have a client who was interviewing for a startup position that was almost a hybrid medical device / pharma, and they were looking for sales attributes from a medical device person with sales attributes of a pharmaceutical person. And if you've been in the business long enough, you know that they're apples and oranges, right? They're both fruit, but different types of selling competencies and skill set. So for this particular startup position, it was interesting because my client had a little bit of both, but she was heavy on the pharmaceutical side. So that was her default mode. So part of this is to go out there and kind of change and say, yes, I can do both. Again, I love using the analogy of professional athletes. You're a professional football player or a baseball player. Very hard to find people who are proficient in multiple sports. But if you're asking someone to be a professional baseball, football player, you're going to get someone who's kind of in between. So when you're going out there and picking a subspecialty or a job and you're focused on that, make it easy for people to find you, to see what you can do, to read your success stories, to reach out for you, to ask for questions. Again, you may have a great professional portfolio or a brag book. You're not going to be able to share all of that online, but you can do what Bari does, is share a little bit of your stories, a little bit of your success stories in the past, and give people a reason to pick up the phone or email you and say, gee, that was very insightful. It was exciting. I'd love to learn more. I think that's the big takeaway when we talk about transitioning for today is leave that trail of breadcrumbs to have them want to go to that next step, right? That action step. Bari, anything you'd like to add before we open it up to questions and kind of wrap things up?
Actually, yes. One of the things with stories is that I think it's also helpful not only to share your success stories, but to share a story where maybe you ran into a weakness or a problem and how you resolved it and what you learned from it. Because nobody's perfect all the time, but if you can show that you've learned from your mistakes or recovered from an accident, that sometimes can be more powerful than a success story. So if you're going to share, share both sides, but make sure that it paints you in the light in which you'd like to be seen.
Right. Well, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly part of this, right?
Yeah.
As much as we want to put our best face forward, people also want to see that you overcame challenges, that you learned, and that you're going to be consistent with your success going forward. So, all right, Denise, anything else, any thoughts from your end about sharing? What have you learned over the last, I don't know, couple months in your journey? How long have you been transitioning, by the way? Cindy, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute and somebody was talking to me. Well, truthfully, it's been about a year and a half.
Okay. All right. So do you have, well, it sounds like things are starting to move in the right direction, but again, just because we're being transparent, if you had any learning moments to share with people who are watching this or may watch the recording, is there anything you would share or do differently that you learned, if you don't mind?
No, not at all. I think what you said really resonated a lot about making sure your profile fits what you actually do, because I've actually changed my profile several times as far as my banner and how I position myself, because originally I had put my banner as healthcare sales. So what I started getting was a lot of insurance sales. People for insurance sales contacted me for, health insurance sales. I'm like, no, that's the wrong thing. So it is really important, I think, to position yourself properly on your LinkedIn profile. And the other thing that I am learning is that these video interviews are becoming more common now, where it's just, you are given questions. So it's not like a face-to-face. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that started getting popular. I think 5 years ago was the first time I saw somebody run into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've now had it 3 times.
Right.
So it's, you have to get comfortable staring at a monitor, and answering questions under pressure.
Well, were you successful? Did you get chosen for the next step?
The first time, no, because I admit it was pretty awful. But the next 2 times, yes.
All right, excellent. Congratulations. Well, and that's another reason it's funny where if I go again, I don't want to age myself, but for those of us who remember getting our first answering machine and having to put your voice and record your voice, after you recorded it, you're like, who's that person? I don't know that person. And seeing yourself on video for that first time was challenging, but the video screening is, they're doing that. They're vetting people right up front, just because the recruiters don't have enough time to do the phone interview. And that's the power of putting video up on your website, is if somebody's interested, they'll be able to look at a couple of your quick videos and either yay or nay, ask them to go to that next step. In a sense, you're kind of, think about going shopping, right? I go to Costco, or you go to the supermarket, and you have the people in the aisles there with their free samples, right? That's what you want to do. You want to be a free sample. You want to be the good free sample that people keep coming back for.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else before we wrap it up? I know we've been on the phone for a little while. It's funny how once we start sharing information, time goes. But Cindy, anything else before we wrap it up today?
Just not get discouraged.
Yeah.
I mean, you just keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect thought. I mean, you know, it's funny when Bari was talking about the video when she started, and I knew, again, Bari has a great story. We all have great stories, but the goal here is, and I share this, is progress, not perfection. And when you're transitioning, unless you're an expert and you transition all the time, which you don't want to be, right? What's the message for that in that? Is that we're not used to doing that. We're not used to selling ourselves. The economy is, depending on the subspecialty you're in, is either booming or busting. And you want to be out there and realize that this is a process, and you have to contact people and you have to touch them. So anytime you're out there, as long as you're making progress, to me, that's a success. And I want to make sure that that's helpful. So thank you for reminding us of that. Bari, any final thoughts before we wrap it up today?
Basically, I think that the two main things are always make sure that your profile is complete, make sure that you've identified the right targets, and then once you have those two pieces together, try to drive as much traffic to your profile and your activity on LinkedIn as you can, because staying visible is the key to other people finding you. If you're just put up your profile, you don't have a banner picture, you don't participate on LinkedIn, nobody's going to find you. There are keywords, but unless somebody's looking for a needle in the haystack and your profile is just a list of all the right keywords, it's just going to sit there like a book on the shelf that collects dust. The only way to get people to notice you is to make yourself noticeable.
Excellent, thank you. And on that note, well, that's a topic for another conversation. When I talk about LinkedIn in the community, and I do speak fairly often about leveraging LinkedIn, everyone has a LinkedIn profile, whether or not they're using it, whether they're using it in their day-to-day job or they're using it to transition, really depends on a lot of factors. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about going forward, I think, on our next transitioning tips. Bari, looks like you had something else you wanted to throw in there.
Yes. The reason that I am so passionate about getting people active and noticed on LinkedIn is because every year the statistics keep increasing that more and more jobs are gotten through networking. The days of applying for a job that you found on Indeed and getting that job are over. They only fill 3 to 6% of the jobs that way. So LinkedIn truly is the key to landing your next role, because it's an 85% chance that you're going to get your next position through networking. And where else can you network aside from in person? LinkedIn is pretty much it. They're the only game in town.
Right. So we're going to leave it at that. And if you don't like networking, which I understand, think of it as relationship building. And that's what we do as sales professionals. So we're going to talk about relationship building online, I think, during our next transitioning tip. So for everybody else who next week on the 29th, this is another topic near and dear to my heart. If you're a manager or a senior sales professional and you have some team members on your sales associates and you're running a team, we're going to be talking about motivating your sales team. But it could be just motivating your customer service team, motivating your leadership team. So we're going to throw some ideas around, take some questions, and again, share some of the things that we've run into. So join us for that if you're available next week. If not, you can listen to the recording. In the meantime, have a great, safe, dry week, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you. See you later, Cindy. See you later, Barry.
Bye.
Bye.